Welcome to section 9.2, which is called factoring, and it's factoring using the distributive property, but you're going to always hear me say that this is called factoring by factoring out a GCF. Factoring by GCF is a more common way to refer to it. This is the first type of factoring that you're going to learn, and you're going to end up learning 5 different types of factoring. So by the end of this chapter, you're going to know 5 different ways to factor. And this type, the GCF, is the first type you will always try. No matter what problem I give you, you will always try to factor out the GCF. So in order to know how to do factoring by GCF, we got to go back to chapter 8 and remember what we were doing in chapter 8. So when I have this problem, it means I have to multiply, and it means I'm going to multiply by distributing. And when I do multiply by distributing, I multiply 4a times 3a and get 12a squared. And then I multiply 4a times 4 and get plus 16a. That's what we did in chapter 8, multiplying. In chapter 9, when we factor, you're going to undo this. In other words, you're going to do the reverse of what you did in chapter 8. The reverse of multiplying is factoring. So it's breaking it down to its factors. So the way that you do that is you look at these two terms and you say to yourself, you're looking for the greatest common factor. Looking for the GCF. So between 12 and 16, without going through the whole process of prime factorization, can you think of the biggest number that divides evenly into 12 and 16? 2 divides evenly into 12 and 16, but it's not the biggest one. The biggest one is 4. And then between a squared and a, there is a common factor. The greatest common factor between a squared and a is a. They have a in common. Now to factor, we're going backwards and trying to figure out what will go into the parentheses. So you say to yourself, 4a times what gives me 12? 4 times what gives me 12? 3. And a times what gives me the a squared? A times a gives a squared. Then 4a times what, or first just 4 times what equals 16, and a times what equals a, I don't need to put anything there. A times 1 equals a, I leave that. So in the end, this is what I end up with. When I multiply this out, you can check your answer by multiplying it back together and see if you get this. Okay, we're going to do many of these until you get the idea. I just wanted to show you on this last problem that the common mistake is to factor out something, but not the greatest common factor. If I had factored out 2a, it'll still work. I can still factor it, but it won't be the greatest common factor, and therefore it will be wrong. If I factored out a 2a, then inside the parentheses, I'd have 2 times what to give 12, 6, and a times what to give a squared, a, plus 2 times what is 16, 8. So this works. If I multiply this back together again, I do get 12a squared plus 16, but because it's not the greatest common factor, it's going to be wrong. And like we did it the first time, you need to factor out 4a and then get 3a plus 4. That would be the only correct answer. Okay, we're now going to factor, and all these directions will just say factor right now. We're going to factor 18cd squared plus 12c squared d plus 9cd. So my first thing I'm thinking about is looking at the numbers. And I'm thinking, what is the biggest number that they all have in common, the biggest factor? So 6 will go into all three of these. Nope, 6 doesn't go into 9. So I'm going to have to go to 3. 18 divides by 3, 12 divides by 3, 9 divided by 3. 3 is actually the biggest number, so I'm going to take out the 3. Then between c squared, and c, the greatest common factor is c. Between d squared, d, and d, the greatest common factor is d. So that's what I'm factoring out. Now I'm going to figure out what goes inside the parentheses. So I say to myself, 3 times what number gives me this 18 up here? That would be a 6. C times what is this c up here? I don't need anything for the c. D times what is d squared? D times d is d squared. The first term's done. Second term, 3, let me change, 3 times what gives me this 12? That would be a 4. C times what gives me c squared? C. And d times what gives me d? I don't need anything in the d spot. Then the last one, and these all have pluses, so these are all going to have pluses. 3 times what is 3? That's a 3. C times what is c? Don't need anything. D times what is d? Don't need anything. So that's your final answer. To double check that it's right, you're going to look inside the parentheses, make sure there aren't any common terms. Do I see a c more than once, d more than once, and do these numbers have a common factor? Nope, so I did it right. Everything's good there. Let's go on to another one. Let's do 9x squared plus 36x. So you're looking at it and saying, between the numbers, what's the greatest common factor? And that would be a 9. Between the letters, x squared and x, the greatest common factor is an x. Now I put my parentheses. 9 times what is 9? I don't need anything. X times what is x squared? I need an x. X times x is x squared. Plus 9 times 4 gives me that 36, and I don't need anything for the x. Every problem you can check, see if you've done it right, by multiplying. This is the answer for this one, but I could check it by multiplying them together again, getting 9x squared plus 36x. But this is my answer. Okay, the next one we're going to do is 20x squared y plus 5x minus 25xy to the fourth. So this time we have a minus in here. So again, we look at the numbers and we say to ourselves, what's the greatest common factor of 20, 5, and 25? The greatest number that divides evenly into all of them is 5. Now between x squared, x, and x, it would be x. Between y, nothing, and y to the fourth, I can't take out a y because there's no y in this middle term. So that's not a common factor. I don't take it out. Now I figure out what goes in the parentheses. So I'm doing 5 times what number equals 20? That would be 4. X times what is x squared? And nothing times y to be y. I've got to put the y there. Now, this next term, 5x times what is 5x? You have to put the number 1. You can't leave that blank. 5x times 1 is 5x. And then 5 times what is 25? 5. X times what is x? I don't need anything. And I need a y to the fourth here. So you get to the end and you think, I'm kind of confused. I don't get if this is right. This is my answer, and now I'm going to check it because I'm going to multiply all three. I will get 20x squared y plus 5x plus 25xy to the fourth. Oops, I totally missed the negative. Ugh, darn. This should have been minus right here. And it also should be minus here. 5x times negative 5 is going to give me that negative 25. So sorry about that. I'm going to leave this here. But make sure you see that if there's a negative there, we're going to have it down here also. Okay, let's do another. Okay, we're going to try this problem. We're going to factor. If you feel like you're ready to do this on your own, then put it on pause and give it a try. You got to start testing it out. Okay, so between 16, negative 2, and 4, the greatest common factor is a 2. Between a to the 5th, a, and a to the 4th, it's an a. Between b, b, and b to the 6th, it's a b. So my greatest common factor is 2ab. Now figure out what's in the parentheses. 8a to the 4th minus 1 plus 2a to the 3rd, b to the 5th. I believe I've done it correctly, but let's multiply it together to see. 16a to the 5th b minus 2ab plus 4a to the 4th b to the 6th. All good. This one is my answer, the one that's boxed in. All right, how about 20a plus 15b? So my greatest common factor between the two numbers is going to be 5, and between the a and the b there's no common factor. So I'm just factoring out of 5 times 4a plus 3b. This should be right. We can always check it to make sure. Multiplying it back together, 20a plus 15b. All good. Okay, c squared d to the 4th plus c d to the 3rd. To factor this, there's no numbers, so I'm going straight to the variables. Between c squared, c and c, factoring out of c. Between d to the 4th, nothing, and d to the 3rd, I can't factor out a d. Now I'll do the inside. C times c d to the 4th plus 1 plus d to the 3rd. This should work. Let's check. To check it, we're going to multiply and get c squared d to the 4th plus c d to the 3rd. Everything looks good.